You think the history of flight started with two brothers in North Carolina in 1903? That everything before that was just birds and kites and men jumping off cliffs with feathered arms? Then explain a 2,000-year-old model aircraft found in an Egyptian tomb that aeronautical engineers tested in a wind tunnel. And it flew. Explain Sanskrit texts from ancient India that describe flying machines in such precise detail that a scientist in 1904 built one from the instructions and filed a patent. And explain a stone carving in a temple in Cambodia that shows something so specific, so unmistakably mechanical, that the engineers who studied it said there is no other word for what this is. 5 machines. 5 pieces of evidence that someone, long before the Wright brothers, long before we say any of this was possible, had already solved the problem of flight. The most impossible one is last. Stay with me. Here is what nobody tells you about the history of flight. The story we learned goes like this. Humans watched birds for thousands of years. They dreamed of flying. They tried and failed. Then in 1903, 2 bicycle mechanics from Ohio figured it out and everything changed. That story is clean. It is simple. It fits on one page of a textbook. But it has a problem. The evidence does not cooperate. Because scattered across the ancient world, in tombs, in temples, in texts that are thousands of years old, there are descriptions, drawings, and physical objects that should not exist. Things that look like wings and rotors and engines. Things that match the physics of flight so closely that modern aeronautical engineers have looked at them and said the same thing. This is not a coincidence. Something was flying, long before we say it was possible. And the record of it is still there, sitting in museums, carved into temple walls, written in texts that scholars have been arguing about for 100 years. 5 machines. 5 times the official timeline falls apart. Number 1. The Saqqara bird. Egypt, 1998, the Cairo Museum. A storage room full of objects that had been sitting in boxes since they were dug out of a tomb in Saqqara in 1998. A physician and archaeologist named Khalil Masiha was going through the boxes when he picked up a small wooden object about 14 centimeters long. It had been labeled bird. But Masiha looked at it and saw something that stopped him cold. The wings were not like any bird carving he had ever seen. They were flat on top and curved underneath. The tail was vertical, not horizontal. And there were no legs, no feet. No features you would put on a decorative bird. But there was a small peg on the nose that looked exactly like the mount for a stabilizer fin. Masiha took the object to aeronautical engineers. They looked at it and said the same thing he was thinking. This is a wing profile. Specifically, it is what engineers call a cambered wing. Flat on top, curved underneath. This exact shape is what generates lift. It is the cross-section of every aircraft wing flying today. The ancient Egyptians did not decorate birds with cambered wings. They decorated birds with wings that looked like bird wings. Flat, symmetrical, angled upward. This thing was not modeled on a bird. It was modeled on something that flew differently from a bird. In 2006, a group of researchers added a small stabilizer fin to the peg on the nose. The mount was there, the fin itself had been lost, and tested the object in a wind tunnel. With the fin added, the Saqqara bird generated measurable lift at low airspeeds. It glided, stably, repeatedly. The object is made from sycamore wood and dates to approximately 200 BC. It was found in a tomb at Saqqara, alongside other model objects that Egyptians used to represent real things in the afterlife. Ships, furniture, tools, models of things that existed. The Egyptian Museum labels it as a ceremonial bird. The aeronautical engineers who tested it call it something else. Nobody has been able to explain how an ancient Egyptian craftsman produced a perfect cambered wing profile. The most important discovery in aviation history. 2,000 years before anyone else figured out that this was the shape that made flight possible. Number 2. The Vimanas of ancient India. Sanskrit, the ancient language of India, one of the oldest written languages on Earth. In the Sanskrit texts, there is a word that appears hundreds of times across dozens of ancient documents: Vimana. It is usually translated as flying palace or celestial chariot. In the Ramayana, one of the two great epics of ancient India, a Vimana is described as a double-decked circular aircraft with portholes and a dome. It flew with the speed of the wind. It made a melodious sound. It could travel in any direction, and it left a trail of fire beneath it. That is a description from a text that scholars date to somewhere between 300 BC and 300 AD. But the Ramayana is literature. Poets exaggerate. Gods fly around in chariots. You could explain it away. What you cannot explain away as easily is the Vaimanika Shastra. This is a different kind of document entirely. It is not a story. It is a technical manual. It describes in precise detail the construction and operation of several types of flying machines. It covers materials. It covers propulsion. It covers navigation. It covers the physiology of pilots at altitude. It describes different aircraft for different purposes. Some for short distances, some for long, some capable of becoming invisible. The text was dictated between 1904 and 1923 by a man named Pandit Subbaraya Shastri, who claimed he was receiving it telepathically from an ancient sage. He had no technical education. He could not read English. But the manuscript he produced contains aeronautical terminology and engineering concepts that were not in mainstream circulation in India at the time. In 1974, the manuscript was studied by aeronautical engineers at the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. Their report concluded that some of the aircraft designs were aerodynamically flawed and could not fly as described. The press reported this as, "The Vaimanika Shastra is fake." But not what the report said. What the report actually said was more interesting. It said the designs showed knowledge of aerodynamic principles. It said some concepts were more sophisticated than their execution. It said the text appeared to combine genuine ancient knowledge with gaps that the later transcriber could not fill in. In other words, someone who knew something about flight wrote parts of this, and someone who did not know enough filled in the rest. The original source of the knowledge was not identified. Pandit Subbaraya Shastri died in 1941. The manuscript sat in a library in Mysore for decades. The aeronautical engineers wrote their report, and the question of where the technical knowledge in the Vaimanika Shastra actually came from has never been answered. Number 3. The Dendera reliefs. Upper Egypt. The Temple of Hathor at Dendera, built during the Ptolemaic period, around 50 BC to 30 AD. The walls are covered in carvings, thousands of them. Hieroglyphs, ritual scenes, astronomical charts. And in one corridor, the carvings look like something else entirely. 6 images. Each one shows a large oval shape, like a bulb or an egg. Inside each oval there is a serpent stretched from one end to the other. In some of the images, the serpent is shown with a lotus flower at its base that looks like it is providing the energy. In 2 of the images, there is a figure standing outside the bulb, holding what looks like a cable connected to the base. In 1978, 2 electrical engineers named Walter Garn and Peter Krasa looked at these images and said they were looking at electric light bulbs. Specifically, they said the oval shape was an evacuated glass vessel. The serpent was a filament. The lotus was an insulator. The cable was an electrical connection. They were not the first to notice. An Austrian electrical engineer named Walter Garn had made the same argument in the 1960s. The argument is not fringe. It has been peer-reviewed. It has been argued back and forth in academic journals for 50 years. The mainstream response is that the images are religious symbols. The serpent is a standard Egyptian hieroglyph. The oval represents the primordial egg of creation. Everything has a conventional explanation. But here is what the conventional explanation does not address. In the basement of the temple, there are reliefs that show the same oval objects being carried on boats. And in those reliefs, there are no priests, no offerings, no ritual context. Just people carrying the objects carefully from one place to another, the way you would carry something that needed to be handled with care. In 2010, a physicist at a German university tested a replica of the Dendera bulb design with a Van de Graaff generator providing static electricity. Inside the replica bulb, the air ionized and glowed with a faint light. The serpent shape formed in the ionized gas exactly as depicted in the carvings. The experiment worked. What it proves is disputed. What it shows is not. Someone in ancient Egypt carved something that, when you apply electrical current to a replica of it, behaves like a light source. Whether that was intentional or coincidental is the question nobody has resolved. And if it was intentional, then the question of what was powering these devices and where that knowledge came from and where it went is still completely open. Number 4. The Palenque astronaut. Southern Mexico, the ancient Maya city of Palenque, 7th century AD. In the tomb of a ruler named Pacal, there is a stone sarcophagus lid 5 meters long and 3.5 meters wide, covered in intricate carvings. The central figure is a man. He is reclining at an angle. Both hands are engaged with objects in front of him. One foot is extended, pressing against something below him. His gaze is directed forward. Around him are mechanical-looking shapes, tubes, and what appears to be a nozzle or exhaust point at the bottom of the image. In 1968, a Swiss author named Erich von Däniken published a book called Chariots of the Gods. In it, he described the Palenque sarcophagus lid as a depiction of an ancient astronaut piloting a spacecraft. The figure was a pilot. The tubes were controls. The exhaust at the bottom was a rocket engine. The academic world dismissed this immediately, and the academic world was right to point out that the conventional interpretation of the carving is well documented. The reclining figure is Pacal, descending into the underworld. The mechanical shapes are the world tree of Maya cosmology. The exhaust at the bottom is the entrance to Xibalba, the Maya realm of the dead. Every element has a known Maya symbolic meaning. But here is what is genuinely strange. In 2011, a group of aerospace engineers from a university in Mexico City was asked to analyze the carving purely from an engineering perspective, without reference to Maya symbolism, and describe what they saw. They did not know the conventional interpretation going in. Their report described a figure in a reclined position consistent with the posture used in high-acceleration vehicles to distribute G-force across the body. They identified what they called a control interface in the hand positions. They noted the exhaust geometry at the base was consistent with a directed thrust nozzle. They said if they were looking at a modern technical drawing, they would call this a pilot in a vehicle. Then they were shown the conventional Maya interpretation. Their response was careful. They said both interpretations were consistent with the physical evidence, that the carving could be either, that nothing in the physical object ruled out the engineering interpretation. That is not the same as saying Pacal was an astronaut. It is not even close to that. But it is saying that the shape of this carving matches the shape of something an aerospace engineer recognizes. And that recognition does not go away just because a different explanation also fits. Number 5. The Cambodian temple carvings. And this is the one you need to sit with. Cambodia, the temple complex of Angkor. Built between the 9th and 15th centuries, one of the largest religious monuments ever constructed. The walls are covered in hundreds of thousands of individual carvings. Most of them are recognizable: gods, demons, battles, ceremonies, animals. But in the Temple of Ta Prohm, there is a carving that has been photographed, studied, argued over, and never resolved. It shows an animal, but not one that belongs in 12th century Cambodia or anywhere else in recorded natural history. It has a round body, a short neck, a small head with what appears to be a bony frill or crest, 4 legs, a tail. It looks like a stegosaurus, not vaguely like a stegosaurus, not with some imagination. When paleontologists, scientists who study ancient animals, have been shown this carving without being told where it comes from, multiple independent researchers have described it as consistent with a depiction of a stegosaurus. Stegosaurus went extinct approximately 150 million years ago. The temple was built in the 12th century AD. The gap between those two dates is 149,800,000 years. The conventional explanations are three. 1. The carving was based on a fossil. The Cambodian sculptors found Stegosaurus bones and reconstructed the animal from them, including somehow correctly inferring the bony plates on the spine, which are rarely preserved in fossils. 2. The animal is not a Stegosaurus at all, but a stylized chameleon, or boar, set against a decorative leaf background that resembles the plates on the spine. 3. The sculptor saw a living animal. Option 1 requires a level of paleontological reconstruction from incomplete fossil evidence that modern scientists struggle with even today. Option 2 requires you to look at the carving, and it is very specific, very clear carving, and decide that the rounded body, the 4 legs, the neck, the head, and the row of projections along the spine are all decorative background. Option 3 requires a Stegosaurus to have been alive in 12th century Cambodia. None of these explanations is comfortable. All three have problems. In 2007, a team from the Angkor Conservation Project did a detailed photographic and physical survey of the Ta Prohm carvings. Their report on the specific carving in question noted that it was executed with the same technical skill and intentionality as every other animal carving on the temple walls. It was not a mistake. It was not a sketch. It was a deliberate and careful representation of something. What that something was, they did not conclude. The carving is still there. You can visit it. You can stand in front of it and make up your own mind about what the sculptor in 12th century Cambodia was looking at when they picked up their chisel.
5 objects. 5 moments where the official timeline of human knowledge stops making sense. A wing profile that should not have existed for 2,000 more years, sitting in an Egyptian museum labeled as a bird. Technical manuals for flying machines written in a language that predates modern aviation by millennia. Carvings in an Egyptian temple that glow when you run electricity through a replica of them. A sarcophagus lid that aerospace engineers describe in the same language they use for aircraft. And a stone carving of an animal that was extinct for 150 million years before the temple that contains it was built. Here is what these 5 things have in common. Each one was found. Not built for us, not left as a message, just found. In a tomb, in a storage room, on a temple wall. Sitting there, waiting for someone to look at it the right way. And each time someone did look at it the right way, an engineer, a physicist, a paleontologist looking at something without being told what to expect, they described the same thing. Something that should not be there. The standard response is always the same. Coincidence, misidentification, religious symbolism, wishful thinking. And maybe right. Maybe every single one of these 5 things has a mundane explanation that the next generation of researchers will pin down and close the file on. But maybe the reason the files have stayed open, for decades, for a century in some cases, is not because the researchers are not smart enough. Maybe it is because the evidence keeps being more specific than a coincidence should be. An aerodynamic wing profile is not vague. A technical manual with propulsion diagrams is not vague. A carving that glows when you electrify it is not vague. An animal that every paleontologist recognizes independently is not vague. Something was known. Something was built. Something flew. And whatever it was, whoever figured it out first, the record of it is still here. Carved in stone. Sealed in tombs. Written in languages nobody fully reads anymore. Waiting for someone to take it seriously enough to ask the question all the way to the end. Write in the comments which of these 5 you think is the hardest to explain away, and whether you think, if we ever do find the full answer, it will change everything we think we know, or whether we already know, and someone has already decided we are not supposed to.